Picture this. The year is 1612, and the British East India Company has just established its first trading post in India. Initially, it was all about trade, spices, and silk. But as the company grew, so did its ambitions. It wasn't long before the British East India Company started to flex its muscles, eventually gaining political control over vast regions of the Indian subcontinent. A turning point came in 1757 with the pivotal Battle of Plassey. This battle wasn't just about victory or defeat, it marked the beginning of British political rule in India, a chapter that would last for almost 2 centuries. Over time, the British East India Company transformed from a commercial enterprise to a political entity, its influence extending far beyond trade and into the very fabric of Indian society. From a mere trading post to a political powerhouse, the British had set their roots deep in Indian soil. With the Battle of Plassey, the British East India Company started its rule, marking the beginning of a new era in Indian history. This epic, spanning roughly 100 years from the mid-18th to mid-19th century, is often referred to as the Company Rule. The British East India Company, a mercantile venture turned political powerhouse, skillfully manipulated the diversity and disunity among India's local rulers to its advantage. Using a combination of diplomacy, subterfuge, and outright warfare, the company gradually established its dominion over vast swaths of the Indian subcontinent. But it wasn't just about territorial gains. The company was primarily an economic entity, and it ruthlessly exploited India's resources for its own benefit. Cotton, silk, indigo, tea, and opium were among the many goods shipped back to Britain, fueling the Industrial Revolution while draining the wealth of India. However, the company's rule wasn't just about exploitation, it also introduced new administrative and legal systems. English became the language of administration and higher education, setting the groundwork for India's current status as the world's second-largest English-speaking nation. The company established a centralized bureaucracy and a uniform system of law, which, despite their initial role as instruments of control, would later form the backbone of modern India's administrative machinery. But these changes came with a heavy cost. The Bengal famine of 1770, which claimed the lives of approximately 1/3 of the region's population, was largely a consequence of the company's economic policies. Draconian tax demands and forced cultivation of cash crops instead of food grains led to widespread devastation, underscoring the dark side of the company's rule. The company's reign was marked by exploitation and drastic changes, setting the stage for a direct rule by the British Crown. This period of history, often overlooked, was a critical juncture that shaped the course of India's future, laying the foundation for the struggles and triumphs that were yet to come. The year 1858 marked the end of company rule and the beginning of the British Raj. The shift from company rule to crown rule was not an arbitrary decision, but a consequence of a series of events, with the revolt of 1857 serving as the tipping point. The revolt, also known as the First War of Independence, was a widespread rebellion against the British East India Company's high-handed rule. It was a significant catalyst that exposed the company's inability to manage its territories effectively. As a consequence, the British government stepped in, bringing an end to the company's reign. With the Crown's takeover, the British government now directly controlled India. The administration was overhauled. A Secretary of State for India, backed by a 15-member council, was appointed in Britain to oversee Indian affairs. The Governor-General of India was given the title of Viceroy, becoming the Crown's direct representative in India. The British Raj ushered in significant changes in education. English was promoted as the medium of instruction, and a number of schools and colleges were established. The goal was not just to create a literate population but also to create a class of Indians who were, as Lord Macaulay famously put it, Indian in blood and color but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. Infrastructure, too, saw a significant overhaul under the British Raj. Railways, telegraph lines, roads, and canals were developed on a large scale. While these changes did modernize India to an extent, they were primarily aimed at consolidating British control and facilitating resource extraction. The Crown rule brought about its own set of changes, some positive, some not so much. But let's not forget that the seeds of discontent were already sown. The company rule had left a deep-seated resentment among the Indian populace. The Crown rule, despite its reforms, was just another form of foreign control. The desire for self-rule had already been ignited. The Crown rule brought about its own set of changes, but the seeds of discontent were already sown. As the 20th century dawned, so did the fight for Indian independence. The journey to independence was not a solitary road. It was a path forged by many, each playing their role, each contributing to the larger narrative. At the forefront of this struggle were two organizations, the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. The Indian National Congress was formed in the late 19th century, initially to moderate political reforms and represent Indian interests to the British government. However, as the desire for self-rule grew, so did the Congress's role, transforming into an organization that spearheaded the fight for independence. Around the same time, another important political group was emerging, the Muslim League. It was established with the aim to protect the rights of the Muslim minority, and it too played a pivotal role in the struggle for independence. The road to independence was marked by key events that shaped India's history. One such event was the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, a grim day in 1919 when British troops opened fire on an unarmed crowd of Indians, leading to hundreds of deaths. This tragedy sparked an outrage across the country, fueling the desire for independence. In response to such atrocities, leaders like Mahatma Gandhi initiated the non-cooperation movement, urging Indians to refuse to cooperate with the British government. This peaceful form of resistance was a new approach, one that relied on the strength of unity and non-violence. As the years passed, the call for independence grew louder. The Quit India movement of 1942, led by the Indian National Congress under the leadership of Gandhi, Nehru and Bose, demanded an end to British rule. It was a definitive moment that marked the final push towards freedom. These leaders, with their differing ideologies and methods, all contributed to the struggle for independence. Mahatma Gandhi with his philosophy of non-violence, Jawaharlal Nehru with his vision of a modern India, and Subhas Chandra Bose with his relentless pursuit of freedom, all played crucial roles in this historic journey. The struggle was long and arduous, but the spirit of the Indian people remained unbroken. Finally, after almost 200 years of rule, the British were ready to leave India. As the world emerged from the ravages of World War II, Britain found itself economically and politically drained. The war had taken a heavy toll on the British Empire, and maintaining control over its vast overseas territories, including India, was becoming increasingly untenable. In the midst of this, the clamor for independence in India was reaching a fever pitch. The Indian National Congress, under the leadership of figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, had been pushing for full sovereignty. Their non-violent resistance and civil disobedience campaigns had galvanized the Indian masses, making the continuation of British rule increasingly difficult. The British government, recognizing the changing tide, began negotiations for India's independence. Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, was tasked with overseeing the transition. He proposed what came to be known as the Mountbatten Plan, which outlined the steps for the transfer of power to the Indian people. However, the road to independence was far from smooth. The plan also involved the partitioning of India into two separate nations, India and Pakistan. This decision was based on religious lines, with Hindu-majority areas forming India and Muslim-majority areas forming Pakistan. The partition led to one of the largest mass migrations in human history, as millions of people moved across the newly drawn borders. It was a period marked by widespread violence and communal tensions, a tragic side note to the joy of newfound freedom. On August 15, 1947, India woke up to a new dawn, a dawn of freedom, but not without its share of challenges. The end of British rule marked the beginning of a new chapter in India's history, but the scars of partition and the challenges of building a new nation were just beginning. Nevertheless, the spirit of independence, hard-earned and long-awaited, was a beacon of hope for the future. From the establishment of a trading post in 1612 to the dawn of independence in 1947, India's journey under British rule was tumultuous, to say the least. As we've traced through this narrative, we've seen the evolution of British influence, starting with a humble trading post, evolving into the mighty East India Company, and eventually culminating in the Crown's direct rule over India. This era bore witness to a multitude of pivotal events. The company's rule, marked by ruthless exploitation and economic drain, the Crown's reign, characterized by administrative reforms and racial segregation, and the tireless struggle for independence, a testament to India's resilience and unity. This struggle ultimately led to the end of British rule, a momentous point in India's history. The British rule left an indelible mark on India, shaping its history and future in ways that continue to resonate even today. From the political systems to the railways, the echoes of the British Raj can still be heard in the India of the 21st century.